on a seemingly normal flight right before takeoff. A black CEO who is also a secret air marshal was suddenly slapped in the face by a flight attendant in front of hundreds of people. No one knew what had just happened. No one understood why a calm person like Marcus Hale just sat there not fighting back. There was only silence and shock throughout the cabin. But the real adversity wasn't the slap. It was the choice to stand up for your honor or to stay calm and keep the entire flight safe. If it were you in a moment of being insulted, in a crowd being looked at as a sinner even though you did nothing wrong, what would you choose? How would you act when your heart wants to explode, but your reason forces you to stay still? And then there's this. What could have caused a flight attendant on the verge of collapse to do such a thing? Could a slap change the fate of two people? In an unexpected way. Stay with me to enter this story of pain, choice, and healing. If you feel this story is worth continuing, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel so we can start this journey together. The Dallas afternoon sun was pale, not harsh, but enough to create a feeling of heat on the runway. DFW Airport was as usual, crowded, bustling with people rushing into each other. Marcus Hale stood in the priority line, the ticket in his hand slightly bent as he unconsciously squeezed it while waiting. He wasn't wearing a suit today, just a light blue cotton shirt with rolled-up sleeves and dark khaki pants. All one would see was a quiet, sturdy black man with a neat backpack on his back. No one would guess that he was the CEO of a multi-million-dollar tech startup. His peace only lasted until someone judged him by his appearance, and that happened more often than he would like. Marcus stood still, his eyes on the distant electronic board, but his mind was completely drawn back to Chicago, where his daughter was in the hospital with an asthma attack. He had been flying back and forth all week, trying to manage his company remotely while also being there for her. He needed to be there tonight. "I'll be home before you go to bed," he had promised his one-year-old daughter Eleanor. That promise is more important to him than any meeting. Marcus squeezed a peanut granola bar, Eleanor's favorite, in his pocket. She always brought one with her to school. "Give me one for luck," she said the morning he left Chicago. Marcus sighed. He hoped this flight would go smoothly. As the line moved faster, Marcus stepped forward. And then the moment he stepped through the doors of Monarch 882, he felt a gaze directed at him. A stewardess stood at the door, blonde hair tied back, navy uniform crisp, looking at him with slightly narrowed eyes. Cold, judgmental. Lauren Bishop. The name on the name tag pinned to her chest. "Good afternoon," Marcus greeted softly. Lauren didn't reply. She just glanced down at her backpack and then back at him, as if to say he was carrying something inappropriate. There was an uncomfortable silence. Marcus smiled politely, the way he had always done when he met this kind of look. He continued into the cabin, realizing his seat was near the middle of the plane. "Seat 17C, an aisle seat." "Good. I like this position, easy to turn around and easy to assist in case of cabin emergencies." Whether he was CEO or Air Marshal, even though he held two roles that some respected, Marcus always chose the front row, partly out of habit, partly because he liked to blend in with the crowd. It helped him see better. As he stowed his backpack in the overhead compartment, Lauren appeared from somewhere, her voice as stiff as wood. "Sir, please make sure your bag is fully pushed inside the compartment." Marcus paused. His backpack was completely inside. He checked again. Nothing was wrong. "Yes, ma'am," he replied softly. "It's all in." Lauren stood a few inches closer, her cold eyes scanning him as if searching for some flaw, just making sure, she said in a strained voice. Marcus remained calm. He was used to this. People always looked at him warily because his skin color or his size made them automatically assume he was suspicious. When Lauren left, Marcus sat down in his chair and let out a soft sigh. He felt a pang in his chest, not pain but exhaustion, the feeling one carries with them all their lives when they have to prove they are harmless. An elderly man in his 70s was struggling to fit his bag into the overhead compartment above Marcus. He was panting, his hands shaking slightly from the weakness. Marcus immediately stood up. "Let me help you." The old man smiled gratefully. "Thank you, young man." Marcus gently lifted the bag and placed it neatly in the compartment. But as soon as he closed the compartment door, Lauren appeared right behind him, this time with obvious annoyance in her voice. "Sir, we need passengers to sit down quickly. We are on a tight schedule." Marcus turned back, his attitude polite. "I just helped the old man a little." Lauren replied immediately. her voice so harsh that it startled several nearby passengers. "We don't need you to assist. Just take your seat," a woman in the next row whispered. "Gosh, is there any need to be so tense?" Marcus sat back down. This time, he could feel the chill creeping into the cabin, as if conflict were brewing even though he didn't want it to. He closed his eyes for 3 seconds and took a deep breath. He reminded himself, "I came here to be with my child. Don't let small things distract you from your goal." But even so, he sensed that clearly Lauren wasn't just upset, she was prejudiced. A very familiar feeling that Marcus had learned to recognize long ago, prejudice against someone like him. When everyone was almost settled, Lauren turned back to check one last time before closing the plane door. As she passed Marcus, she didn't look him in the eye, but was close enough for him to hear her slight curl of the lips. "Some people just don't know their place." Marcus opened his eyes. The remark was unnamed, but everyone knew who it was directed at. A young man sitting behind her whispered, "Did she just—" Marcus clenched his hands in his lap, but he swallowed his anger. He knew all too well that reacting in anger usually backfired on people like him. He chose silence. Temporarily. But silence doesn't mean I don't see. Doesn't mean I don't hurt. Doesn't mean I'll let it go on. The plane doors began to close. The cabin quieted. Passengers looked ahead, preparing for the 2-hour journey to Chicago. But Marcus knew intuitively and by experience that this flight would be more than a simple journey. A small storm has begun to form. Very small, but extremely dangerous. And he, as many times before, would have to face it with the calm and discipline that his whole life had honed. Lauren Bishop leaned lightly against the cargo door before the plane closed her hand, clutching the clipboard, as if she let go, everything inside her would collapse to the cabin floor. Her eyes were still focused forward on the empty space between the aisles, but her mind was elsewhere, on the unpaid bills, on her mother's shaky voice on the phone this morning, on the text message from her manager, saying she'd been complained about 3 times this month. Just one more time, and she'll be suspended. And suspension means lost income. Lost income means no medicine this week. It means another penalty on the credit card debt. Lauren had been a flight attendant for nearly 12 years. She had loved the job, flying, meeting new people, escaping the poor town where she grew up. But in recent years, things had become unbearable. Passengers were demanding, flights were late, management was demanding, and she was exhausted. She divorced 4 months ago. Her ex-husband said she was too stressed, too negative, too angry with the world. But he had no idea how much she had to bear. Lauren used to tell herself, "Just get through these few months." But those few months turned into years. When she saw Marcus board the plane, the first thing that came to her mind wasn't a stark distinction. It was a kind of defensive reflex. A tall, confident black man, the kind of guy who would make other passengers look over. The kind of guy Lauren thought would seem to want to show off. She had met a few such people in her profession. Or, so she thought. Perhaps this morning's incident also made her more sensitive. A young male passenger shouted at her for asking to put away her laptop before takeoff. He called her just a waitress in the sky. The manager blamed her for her inappropriate tone. That resentment had not yet dissipated when Marcus appeared. She couldn't explain it all, but the image of him standing by the door, his eyes warm and calm, made her feel small, as if being illuminated, and she hated that feeling. She hated feeling inferior to anyone, especially people who she told herself shouldn't act like they matter. Lauren's mistake wasn't just prejudice. It was a buildup of fatigue that created a thorn in her mind, one that could easily stab anyone who accidentally touched it. As Marcus helped the old man load his luggage into the trunk, Lauren felt like he was overdoing her, doing her job, making her look incompetent. That feeling was wrong, but in Lauren's mind at that moment, it became distortedly right. She walked quickly, her voice suddenly becoming more harsh than necessary. She didn't care that her tone caused a few passengers to turn and look. She just wanted to assert, "I have this cabin under control." But when Marcus's eyes met hers, calm, non-arguing, Lauren felt even more confronted. Part of her knew she was overreacting. But the bigger part couldn't stop. Since her divorce, she has found it easy to lose control when faced with men who are too big or too calm. "People like that make me feel like I'm nothing," she once told her therapist. The doctor said it was a wound from a stressful marriage. But Lauren never really healed. She just threw herself into her work and then let it consume her. When she uttered the words, "Some folks just don't know their place," She spoke softly, but she knew Marcus heard. And at that moment, Lauren felt her heart sink, a kind of warning from deep within. She knew she shouldn't say it, but the feeling of pride, hurt, and pressure that surrounded her made her unable to stop. Lauren hurried to the front of the cabin, trying to take deep breaths. But the more she breathed, the more her chest felt tight. She told herself, just get this flight over with. Just get through today. Just a little more. But she knew that was a lie. From her position at the front of the cabin, Lauren watched Marcus again. He was helping a young woman fold the coat of her fussy baby. No one asked him to help. No one demanded his help. But he did it naturally. Lauren felt a strange feeling, half jealousy, half resentment. How could he be so calm and kind while she struggled with the world? She didn't know that that very thought was the seed that made her irrational anger grow even bigger. The cabin began to quiet as everyone settled in. The low roar of a plane outside signaled that they were about to close. Lauren took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. But just then the shift manager texted her asking for a morning incident report. Lauren felt like someone had just poured a bucket of gasoline on a fire inside her. She turned back to look at Marcus again, this time, with eyes somewhat distorted by her falling mood. She wondered, why do I have to endure all this, while someone like him? She didn't finish the sentence in her head, because that part was what had her wrong from the start. For a moment, the cabin fell silent. Marcus closed his eyes. Lauren felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff. If someone came even a little closer, she would fall. And the one who approached her was Marcus. Not with actions, but with a kindness that made her look at herself. It wasn't Marcus that scared Lauren. It was the image she saw of herself in front of him, small, spiteful, and cruel. To escape that feeling, she built up a defense: prejudice. A dangerous defense, often used by wounded people to hide their true vulnerability. She knew she was climbing a slope. She wouldn't be able to stop if she slid down. But the cabin was closed, and Lauren had no way out. The Monarch 882 cabin slowly faded into the soft golden light of the afternoon as the plane doors closed and passengers began to buckle their seatbelts. The whispers of children, the sounds of people hastily sending text messages before the plane left the gate, the slight clinking of luggage, all blended together into a familiar background noise. But in the midst of it all, Marcus Hale sensed another form of tension, building not from engines or weather, but from people. He glanced across the row of seats and saw Lauren Bishop checking the passenger seatbelts, but her eyes were unfocused. She looked as if she were searching for something to vent her frustration on. Marcus adjusted his seatbelt slightly, trying to tell himself, "It's okay. Just stay calm. Everything will be fine." But he knew he was lying to himself. There was something wrong with this flight attendant, Lauren. The passenger sitting next to Marcus was a young woman named Ashley, holding a fussy 3-year-old boy. "Is she airsick?" Marcus asked softly. Ashley sighed. "I guess so. I've never flown before. I'm sorry if I'm bothering you." Marcus smiled. "It's okay. I have a daughter. I understand this feeling." He bent down and gently handed the tissue to the boy who was rubbing his eyes. "Try taking a deep breath, like blowing a bubble." The boy looked at Marcus curiously, then mimicked the puffing out of his cheeks. Ashley laughed, and the tension in her chest eased a little. But in the meantime, Lauren was walking by. She watched Marcus help the child, and instead of feeling the warmth of the moment, she felt only sarcasm. A wrong thought flashed through her mind. "He did it to look good, to make me look bad." Lauren paused, her voice sharp as a knife. "Ma'am, your son needs to sit still, and you need to keep him close. We're about to take off." Ashley paused at the sound of that voice. "Yes, I'm sorry." Lauren turned to Marcus, as if to say, "See, stay out of my business." Marcus returned the look with a calm gaze. He said nothing. But that silence hurt Lauren more than 1,000 words. The captain announced that the plane was about to take off. The atmosphere in the cabin was tense, as everyone prepared to settle down. But then, a loud cough came from behind. It was the old man Marcus had helped earlier. He coughed long, hard, and labored as if trying to pull the air from his chest. Marcus turned around reflexively, the instinct of someone who had been through countless emergencies. He started to stand, but Lauren stepped forward. "Sir, please keep your mask on properly," Lauren said, her voice a little loud, causing a few people to turn around. The old man tried to answer, but was a bit weak-eyed. Just have a dry throat. Lauren folded her arms. Sir, if you don't comply with the regulations, we will have to ask you to leave the plane. Marcus frowned. That's too much. It was just a cough. Nothing dangerous. And the way Lauren talked, it was like she was taking out her frustration on a harmless old person. Marcus stood up from his chair. Can I get him a glass of water? Lauren spun around, her eyes frozen. Her voice lost all professionalism. Sir, I just told you to remain seated. Marcus kept his voice low and gentle. I understand the rules. But the old man only wanted water. No one wants to cause trouble here. The cabin fell silent. There was something about the way Marcus spoke, calm but firm, that made more than one passenger sense that while he didn't want to argue, he wasn't backing down either. Lauren felt challenged. She took a step forward, closing the distance to just a few inches. Sir, you need to follow instructions. I don't want trouble. Marcus felt his breathing slow. He didn't want conflict. He hated conflict. But he knew that if Lauren continued like this, the cabin would spiral out of control. Ashley placed her hand on Marcus's arm and said softly, just forget it. She seems nervous. Marcus took a deep breath. Yes, he always chose the conciliatory path. Always. But before he could sit down, Lauren uttered a sentence that he and the passengers nearby heard clearly. People like you always want to act like you run the place. The air froze. Ashley gasped. A young man behind her said softly, Whoa. Did she really say that? Marcus froze for a moment. It wasn't just an insult. It was pure prejudice, empty of respect, and aimed at him. Marcus felt a wave of heat run from his chest to the back of his neck, a feeling he had experienced too many times in his life of being judged based on the color of his skin and not his substance. In his head, a familiar voice rang out, calm down. Don't let her drag you down. He closed his eyes for a second, then opened them. His voice was small but clear. What did you say? Lauren was momentarily confused, but her bruised ego made her defend herself. You heard me. The cabin space seemed to crack. A small crack, but enough to open up the much larger storm that was coming. In that moment, Marcus felt not only injustice but a very special pain. Something he thought he was used to, but which turned out to still hurt as much as the first day. The feeling of being seen as a troublemaker, even when he was just helping others. The feeling of being seen as suspicious, even when he just wanted to fly back to his daughter. The feeling of having to be perfect to avoid being seen as a threat. And the worst thing was, he knew if he overreacted, people would turn around and blame him. He lived 42 years with that lesson. Marcus inhaled, his eyes widening in restraint. I suggest you keep your voice respectful to the passengers. Lauren snapped back. I don't need you to teach me how to do my job. A passenger behind shook his head. That's too much. Everything is getting tense by the second. Marcus felt his patience reaching its limit. He looked straight at Lauren, not challenging but clear. If you want to continue this conversation, we can do it after the flight. Lauren gave a wry smile. Oh, I'm sure you'd rather cause trouble now. Marcus calmly said no. I just like to be treated like a human being. The statement silenced the cabin. Not because it was loud, but because it was so simple and true. And it was that calmness, so calm that it seemed to mirror Lauren's turmoil, that set her on fire. In her eyes, Marcus was no longer a passenger. He became a symbol of all the injustices in her life, even though he had done nothing to her. The cabin gradually heated up. The sound of the plane taxiing on the runway seemed to fade away compared to the sound of each person's heartbeat in the cabin. Everything is about to fall apart. And everyone can feel except Lauren, who was pushing herself to the brink. A passenger whispered, "This is not going to end well." And that statement was the opening prophecy for the storm that would explode in the next part. The air in Monarch 882 was as thick as frozen honey. The passengers' breaths seemed to stop in midair. Marcus Hale stood there just a few feet from Lauren, and he could feel all eyes on him, but not in a way that made him feel better. Those were the eyes of people who had just witnessed something that should not have happened. And everyone knew it was not over. Marcus slowly sat back down in his chair. Not because he was giving in, but because he knew he needed time to compose himself. He placed his hands on his thighs, his palms trembling slightly, though his face remained calm. He took a deep breath, then exhaled slowly, just as he had been trained to do for years. Lauren's words still echoed in his head like metal scraping against glass. People like you. He had heard it all his life. In supermarkets, in parking lots, in hotels at airports. He thought he was numb to it. But it turns out, even if you're a CEO, even if you're decorated, even if you're a respected air marshal, you can still be seen as a threat by someone simply because you're a black man. Marcus felt his heart tighten not with anger, but with an indescribable weariness. He remembers the time when he was 15 years old, when he was stopped by a security guard at a shopping mall for taking a look at a watch. He remembers the night on the freeway when the police asked him to lie face down because he fit the description. How many times he lost count. He'd gotten through it all with effort, with discipline, with keeping his cool in every situation. But sometimes cracks opened up like now. Lauren stood at the front of the cabin, gripping the edge of the seat so tightly her knuckles turned white. She looked at Marcus, but not at him, at her own reflection in him, small, uncertain, vulnerable. And she hated that feeling. She didn't want to feel inferior to anyone. She didn't want to see herself as ugly in the eyes of others. But the calmer Marcus got, the more she felt she was losing control. Lauren turned away, trying to continue the safety check, but her hands were shaking. One passenger looked at her in confusion. Another turned to the person next to her and whispered, "What's wrong with this flight attendant?" Lauren heard it, and that made her fall even deeper. Meanwhile, Marcus was having a strong internal struggle. He knew he had to deal with it rationally, but human emotions sometimes don't listen to him. "Calm down," he reminded himself. "My daughter is waiting. I can't let this derail me." But the hurt was the hardest thing to contain. He thought about Eleanor and wondered how she would feel if she saw this. Would she see that her father's skin color made him different, or would she see that he was strong enough not to be dragged down? The thought weighed heavily on Marcus's heart. He wanted his daughter to live in a kinder world than this. A world where children do not see the obvious injustices early on. A world where good people are treated fairly. But today, he was sitting on this plane, being insulted by a flight attendant in a crowded cabin, and he couldn't pretend it didn't hurt. He bowed his head and rubbed the bridge of his nose. The silence was so long that his ears were ringing. From behind, a small voice called out, "Sir, are you okay?" It was Ashley's little boy. He was looking at the old man who had been coughing, his face full of worry. The old man smiled weakly at the boy. "I'm fine, thank you." Marcus turned to look at the two of them, and it pulled him out of his swirling thoughts. The kid was concerned about a stranger, and Lauren was taking her anger out on someone. That small moment made Marcus feel clear about what he wanted to do. Not let other people's confinement define him. He sat up straight and adjusted his seatbelt. Despite the tension in the cabin, he remained strangely calm. But the atmosphere in the room was changing, and everyone felt it. A passenger in front, a middle-aged man in a business shirt, turned down and asked quietly, "Are you okay?" Marcus nodded slightly. "Thank you. I'm fine." The man shook his head. "I've been flying for decades, and I've never seen a flight attendant behave like that." Ashley interrupted, her voice trembling with worry. "She's really overreacting. You're just helping me. Everything will be fine." "Don't worry," Marcus replied in a light voice. But he knew it himself, things would not be okay. Lauren wasn't calm. She was teetering on the edge of a cliff. And with just the slightest movement, everything would explode. Lauren stood back in the center of the cabin, her safety tray in hand. She looked at each person as if trying to find fault to justify herself. Then she looked at Marcus again, longer than necessary. Her eyes were red, anger, hurt, and fear. Marcus looked back, not defiant, not angry, just a calm look, but to Lauren the look felt like an accusation. She hated it. She hated Marcus's silence. She hated that he didn't get angry. Because when a person stays calm for too long, the person who loses control feels like he is being exposed. Lauren stepped closer. The distance was only a hand's breadth. Her voice was low but abrupt. "I hope you're not trying to make a big deal out of this." Marcus calmly said, "No one wants to make a big deal out of it. But you just said something you shouldn't have. Are you implying I'm racist?" Lauren raised her voice beyond professional standards. Another passenger whispered, "She's losing it." Marcus kept his voice low, but his words were firm. "I'm not implying. I'm just repeating what you said." Lauren stiffened. She gasped. It felt like the cabin was spinning. Everything was tense. So tense that you could hear the seat belt vibrating as a passenger shifted. And then, the crack in the cabin became a real fissure. Lauren clenched the clipboard in her hand. The pride, the hurt, the exhaustion of a month, it all mixed together into a dark emotion. The moment felt like an hour, but was actually only seconds. Marcus could sense it. Lauren was about to cross a line. A line that, if crossed, would be impossible to come back from. He opened his mouth, trying to calm himself down one last time. "Miss Bishop, I think." But she interrupted, her voice so sharp it rang through the cabin. "Don't act like a victim," the whole cabin gasped. A man behind them whispered, "Oh, God." At this point, no one can save it anymore. The fuse has been lit, and everyone feels the worst is yet to come. The cabin of Monarch 882 was like a gas chamber. It would only take a small spark to blow up. Everyone knew it. Everyone felt it, but no one expected it to come so quickly. Lauren Bishop stood tall in the aisle, breathing heavily, her hands clenched as if trying to keep herself from falling apart. Marcus Hale sat in seat 17C, his back straight, his eyes calm but deep like a lake about to ripple. A very fragile moment, just a word, a small gesture can cross the line. And Lauren got through it. Her last words, "Don't act like a victim." Not only did it send a sigh through the cabin, it also caused all eyes to turn to Marcus, waiting for his reaction. A young man whispered, "She is crazy." Saying that to people is unbearable. An elderly woman shook her head, slightly, her hand on her chest. "Oh my God, this is not good at all." But Marcus was the quietest one here. He looked at Lauren for several seconds that seemed like minutes. Not angry, not furious, not screaming. There is only a deep sadness. Marcus took a deep breath with a restraint that only those who have endured a lifetime of suffering can muster. He thought he could avoid conflict. He thought if he just kept calm, things would calm down. But Lauren kept pushing the situation further, as if she was wanting someone to hold her back before she destroyed everything. Marcus spoke softly, quietly, but clearly. "Miss Bishop, I am not a victim, but I am not your object of anger either." His voice was calm, but that very calmness made it harder for Lauren to breathe. She gritted her teeth. "I didn't say anything. You're the one causing trouble." Marcus raised his eyebrows slightly. "I helped the old man. I helped the child. I never did anything outside the rules." Lauren replied immediately. "You stood up when the plane was about to move." Another passenger exclaimed. "He was helping. You yelled at him for nothing." Lauren turned to the passenger, her eyes red with anger. "Keep your opinions to yourself." The air became thicker. "Ashley," the young mother hugged her son tighter, her voice trembling. She is losing control." Marcus knew it very well. Looking into Lauren's eyes, he saw fear and anger, a mix that made people act erratically. He knew one important thing. A person who was no longer in control of himself was the most dangerous person in the cabin. "You have to cool down. You have to try one more time." Marcus stood up gently, not quickly, not suddenly, like someone who wanted to avoid any misunderstanding. He held his hands slightly open, a clear sign of nonviolence. "Miss Bishop," he said, very slowly, "we just need to calm down. I don't want this to go any further." The passengers nodded in agreement. A few muttered, "That's right. Someone needs to end this." But as soon as Marcus finished speaking, Lauren snapped back, her voice cracking as if strained to the limit. "I don't need you to tell me how to do things." Her voice echoed throughout the cabin, causing several small children to startle and cry. An uncle sitting in row 15 exclaimed, "Good Lord, she's unhinged." Lauren heard that. She turned to her uncle and said sharply, "Say what you like. This is not a market." The passengers stirred. Their faces changed from annoyance to fear. And that fear, instead of stopping Lauren, made her react even more strongly. She felt surrounded, judged, cornered. And when people are backed into a corner, they often choose the most dangerous way to react. Marcus sensed the situation was getting out of control. He took a deep breath and spoke softly, almost like a plea. "Miss Bishop, I want to remind you I am not your enemy." Lauren let out a short laugh, a dry laugh like the clinking of glass bottles. "You act like you understand me so well." "I don't understand everything," Marcus replied. "But I know you didn't have to say what you said. It's true. But the truth sometimes hurts more than any insult." Lauren's eyes widened, as if she had been hit with the deepest wound. Her voice shook, no longer angry, but like someone triggered by shame. "You don't lecture me. Do you think you're so great?" Marcus remained calm. "I just want." But Lauren interrupted, shouting, "People like you, always acting like you're the hero." An elderly woman gasped. "Oh no." She said it again. A young man turns to you. "Bro, she's gonna get fired for sure." The cabin seemed to be holding its last breath before it exploded. Marcus stood very still, no longer restrained by discipline, but restrained by pain. He spoke each word very softly. "I ask you to stop saying people like you. It is inappropriate. It is offensive." Lauren smiled faintly, her voice distorted. "You're implying it yourself." Marcus sighed. "You know exactly what you're talking about." Lauren clenched her clipboard, her eyes both panicked and aggressive. And then, she took a step closer to Marcus. A step too close. The passengers held their breath. Ashley held her son tighter. The uncle in row 15 whispered, "No, please no." Marcus knew everything was hanging in the balance now. And the scariest thing was that he was no longer in control, because he wasn't the one losing control. He said slowly, "Miss Bishop, don't come any closer. You're nervous. You need to back off." Lauren pursed her lips. "I don't need to back down." Her breathing was labored. Her hands were shaking. She was losing her mind. She could no longer tell who was helping and who was hurting. And Marcus, the calmest person here, became the target for her to vent all her pent-up frustration. She said her last sentence before the storm exploded. "Do you think you are better than others just because you are more polite?" Marcus shook his head slightly, his voice soft as a towel. "No, I just want everyone to be safe." 1 second. 2 seconds. And at exactly the 3rd second, Lauren raised her hand. No one had time to react. No one had time to say anything. Her hand shot up high, fast and strong, like an instinctive reaction of someone threatened by their own inner fear. A woman shouted softly, "No!" A young man jumped out of his chair, "Hey!" But it was too late. The storm has touched the heart, and the fateful moment is about to strike like a thunderclap. The moment the entire flight would never forget. The moment Lauren herself couldn't turn back. And that moment was the beginning of the downfall of her entire life. Lauren Bishop's hand rose, shaking with pent-up emotion, shame, bitterness, and a rage that no longer knew right from wrong. The entire cabin seemed to hold its breath at the same moment. The swing lasted less than a second, but for Marcus Hale, it was a second so long he could feel his heart pounding against his ribs. He had seen violence in his life. On the job, on missions, where he had to disguise himself, observe, and sometimes intervene. But never before had he seen an act motivated by such profound inner turmoil. A slap not meant to cause physical harm, but to dispel the fear that was eating away at the performer's soul. Lauren didn't slap Marcus because she hated him. She slapped him because she was afraid of him, afraid of the image of herself reflected in him. Lauren's hand touched Marcus's face. A sharp slap echoed through the cabin. The noise made several children cry. A woman covered her mouth. A young man shouted, "Hey, what are you doing?" The slap wasn't too hard, but it was enough to make Marcus's face twitch a little. He stood still, didn't react, didn't fight back, didn't push her away. He just raised his head, eyes wide for a few seconds, as if his body was trying to catch up with what had just happened. Then, a cold feeling spread from his cheek to his chest. The whole plane fell silent, a silence so deep that one could hear one's own trembling breath. No one said anything for 3 seconds. Then, on the 4th second, the whole cabin erupted into chaos. A man shouted from row 18. "She slapped him. She slapped the man." An elderly woman stammered. "Someone call the captain. This is insane." A group of passengers behind us reflexively opened their phones and started recording videos. Some seemed panicked, retreating into their seats as if afraid the conflict would spread to them. Ashley hugged her son, tightly trembling. "Oh my God, what happened?" Lauren, after the slap, froze as if electrocuted. Her hand was still in the air. Her eyes were wide. Her face was pale. Maybe the moment her hand touched Marcus's skin, she realized she had just destroyed everything. She blinked repeatedly like someone who couldn't believe herself. A sentence came out of her mouth, very small, very weak. I don't." But no one waited for her to explain. Marcus raised his hand to his cheek, lightly touching the spot where he had been slapped. His skin was hot, not from pain, but from humiliation. Humiliation from an act he never thought he would have to endure in front of hundreds of people simply because of the color of his skin and his presence. Marcus's heart beat so slowly he thought he could hear a clock ticking. He closed his eyes for a second, just 1 second. Then he opened his eyes. He looked straight at Lauren. No anger, no hatred, just a disappointment as deep as the ocean floor. "Miss Bishop," he said in a low, steady voice. "I will say this once." No one in the cabin breathed. "You just attacked a passenger," Marcus continued. Lauren stood frozen. She took a step back, then another. Her voice came out weak. "I didn't mean to. I just—" Marcus didn't interrupt. He let her talk. Lauren gasped, her head shaking slightly. "I just want you. Don't look at me like that. I don't." Her voice broke like a mirror thrown to the floor. No one knew what she was saying, but Marcus understood. He saw the fear in her eyes. Fear of herself. Then Marcus reached into his shirt pocket. A very slow, very obvious movement. He pulled out his black leather wallet, opening it with a familiar motion, one he had performed thousands of times during his air marshal career. The wallet contained a Federal Air Marshal badge and identification. A metal tag gleamed in the yellow cabin light. Marcus held the badge up to Lauren's eye level. No higher, no lower, just where she had to look straight at it. His voice was still soft, but each word seemed compressed from stone. "You just attacked a federal officer on duty." The whole cabin exploded. A gasp came from the back of the plane. A woman screamed, "Oh my God, she's done for." A man whispered to his wife, "This is federal. She's going to jail." Lauren stood frozen. Her eyes were so wide they turned red. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "I tried to avoid this," Marcus continued, still in that eerily calm voice. "I tried very hard." Lauren took another step back, bumping into the back of her seat, startling several passengers. She looked around the cabin like someone pulled from a dream and trapped in a living nightmare. She stammered, "No, no, no, I don't know. You are—" Marcus closed his wallet. There was a small click, but the sound sent shivers down Lauren's spine, as if it were the sound of a coffin being closed on her career. Marcus turned to the passenger near the front door. "Is someone calling the captain right now?" One person quickly stood up. I'm going now." Lauren raised her hand as if to hold the person back. "Don't I didn't mean to. I really didn't." But the passenger squeezed past, disappearing into the area in front of the cabin. Lauren turned to Marcus, her voice near tears. "Please, I beg you. I don't know who you are, but—" Marcus looked at her, his eyes filled with no hatred, only truth. "It doesn't matter who I am. Attacking any passenger is a serious offense." She trembled. "But I lost control. I was nervous. I understand you're having a hard time," Marcus said. "But you've crossed the line." The cabin was dead silent. Only the faint sound of the engines could be heard as the captain received the order to stop the plane right on the taxiway. A moment later, Captain Reeves appeared, his face stern but calm. "What happened?" he asked briefly. The passengers quickly pointed to Marcus and Lauren. No words were needed. It was enough for everyone. Marcus made no accusations. He made no display of authority. He simply said, "Miss Bishop attacked me while I was assisting a passenger." The captain turned to Lauren. "Is that right?" Lauren trembled, tears welling up in her eyes. I didn't mean to. I was stressed. I'm sorry." The captain sighed. A heavy sigh, like someone who knew all too well what was coming. He turned to the flight crew. "We returned to the gate immediately. Cabin no len ting CSL, oh boy, the flight is done. She really messed up. I've never seen anything like this." Ashley hugged her son, panting. "Marcus, are you okay?" Marcus nodded slightly. "I'm fine, don't worry." But no one believed it completely. No one could be completely fine after being insulted and attacked like that. As the plane turned, Lauren slumped in her seat, her hands shaking so much she could barely hold the clipboard. She was scared. She was remorseful. She knew she had ruined everything. Marcus sat back in seat 17. Hands on his thighs, looking straight ahead, face as calm and heavy as a mountain. He was not happy. He was not gloating. He was not revengeful. "I'm just sad." Sad that the world still makes people like him endure humiliating moments like this. Sad that someone who is falling into a pit chooses to drag others down with him. Sad that he knows his pain will eventually be dealt with by procedure, while hers will last a lifetime. No one wins in this. No one. The Monarch 882 cabin fell completely silent, as if everyone knew they were witnessing a moment that would change the fates of two people forever. The cabin of Monarch 882 was filled with an atmosphere so strange it was almost surreal. No one spoke. No one moved. Only the fading hum of the engines could be heard as Captain Reeves turned the plane back toward the gate. For many passengers, it was just a delayed flight. But for Marcus Hale, it was a moment when every breath felt like a stone. You're the one who was attacked. You're the one with the federal officer badge in your pocket. And now you're the one who has to make a decision you never wanted to make. Lauren Bishop slumped into the jump seat by the front door, her hands covering her face. Her clipboard fell to the floor, rolling to a passenger's feet. No one bent down to pick it up. They looked at her with a mixture of fear, disappointment, and pity. Someone was filming. Someone was shaking their head, muttering, "She brought this on herself. This is going to be everywhere online. Career over." Just like that. Lauren listened, and each sentence was like a knife stabbing her heart. Marcus saw it, but what hurt him more was the feeling. He knew this moment would stay with her forever. One slap, just one, is enough to destroy a career. No one taught her how to deal with pressure, with fear, with judgment, but the rules required her to be perfect. That is impossible. Captain Reeves stood before Marcus, his voice low and stern. "Agent Hale, I need your decision. The cabin is no longer in a safe state." Marcus looked up, his deep eyes filled with two conflicting emotions: responsibility and humanity. He didn't answer at once. He glanced around the cabin again. A little girl was crying with fear. A man was frowning with impatience. A couple whispered, "Please let us get to Denver. We have a funeral tomorrow." The engine revved further, like the cabin's heartbeat was slowing. Marcus took a deep breath. He understood if he grounded, the flight would be canceled. More than 160 people would be affected. Many would miss connections, miss work, miss important events. But if you keep the flight in the air, you put them all at risk. One flight attendant losing control could cause a mid-air disaster. I've seen it happen before. I've seen something small become a disaster because someone thought it was probably okay. No, I can't risk it. Marcus stood slowly. He turned to Captain Reeves, then spoke in a low, clear, unmistakable voice. "Captain, as the federal officer on board, I am officially grounding this aircraft." One passenger exclaimed, "Oh my God, he did it." One man sighed, "We're not flying today." A young girl pursed her lips. She forced his hand. "That's on her." Lauren reeled. Her eyes widened, as if Marcus's words had just slammed the final door shut on her life. She said tremblingly, "Agent Hale, please, don't. I will leave the cabin. I will do anything." The captain raised his hand to stop her. "Lauren, don't go near him. Sit still." Lauren nearly collapsed, her hands gripping the seat, her nails turning white from the force. She knew she had officially lost her job. But what terrified her more was the feeling she had just become a dangerous person on the plane she was flying. Marcus didn't look at Lauren, not out of contempt, but because he didn't want to crush the last remnants of her humanity with his gaze. He turned to the passengers, his voice calm but firm. "I apologize for the inconvenience. I know this flight is important to many people." He bowed slightly, in action that many people felt respected. "If there is any risk to your safety in the air, I have to eliminate that risk on the ground." Several people nodded. A woman called out, "You did the right thing. Don't apologize." A 2-3-year-old man added, "We saw everything. It's not your fault." Marcus took a deep breath. The pain in his chest eased a little. Customs and Border Protection and airport security were waiting as the plane taxied into its parking position. When the doors opened, 2 officers entered. No fuss, no tension, just formality. Lauren Bishop shot up from her seat, her hands shaking so much she couldn't hold the seatbelt as it slid down. An officer said softly, "Miss Bishop, please come with us." Lauren breathed heavily, like she was having a panic attack. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I'm just tired. I'm stressed. Please don't take me." One passenger whispered, "Poor thing. she snapped. Another replied, "She hit a federal officer." "It's not small." Lauren turned to Marcus, her eyes pleading like someone clinging to the last ray of light in the darkness. "Agent Hale, please, say something. Say, you don't want me to get caught. Please." Marcus couldn't bear to turn away. He took a step toward her carefully, slowly, so as not to scare her any further. He spoke softly, but each word seemed to embrace her. "Lauren, I don't want you to go to jail. I don't want that for anyone." Lauren choked. So can you save me?" Marcus shook his head slightly. He said with absolute sincerity, "I cannot interfere with the legal process. But I can tell the truth." She held her breath. Marcus continued, "I would say you didn't mean to attack me. I would say you're in crisis. I would say you need support, not punishment." 2 lines of tears rolled down Lauren's cheeks. She said almost inaudibly, "Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry." Marcus bowed his head. "I know." An officer approached and placed a gentle hand on Lauren's upper arm, leading her out of the cabin. No one clapped. No one rejoiced. No one jeered. That silence was the last respect for a person who had just lost himself in the most difficult moment of his life. As Lauren disappeared behind the jet bridge doors, Marcus stood in the empty cabin sighing deeply, a breath full of fatigue, full of regret. No one saw that part. No one saw the sadness in his eyes. Only Ashley came closer, placing her hand on his shoulder. "Marcus, you did the right thing. Don't blame yourself." Marcus nodded slightly. His voice was low. "I don't want to hurt anyone, but sometimes doing the right thing hurts a lot more." Ashley smiled sadly. "That's why the world needs people like you." Marcus didn't answer. He just looked out the window where Lauren had been taken. A small security car was taking her toward the airport security building. The sight of it made Marcus's heart ache. No one can predict the future, but he really hopes that life will still give Lauren a second chance. A few minutes later, Captain Reeves announced all passengers please deplane. Monarch Flight 882 is officially canceled. No one yelled. No one cursed. They just quietly gathered their things, some looking at Marcus with grateful eyes. Some looked at him with sad eyes because they understood no one won in this story. Marcus sat back down, waiting for the cabin to clear. When he stood, his legs felt heavier than usual, as if the decision to ground the plane had not only landed the plane, but also placed a boulder on his heart. But he knew it was the only right decision, and sometimes right doesn't mean gentle. After all, the passengers disembarked from Monarch 882. The cabin felt so quiet that Marcus Hale could hear the faint whirring of the ventilation system. The normally loud and lively plane now felt like a soulless room. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the window, casting a pale gold glow over the seat. Marcus stood in the aisle, eyes on the floor, his hand still lightly touching his cheek where Lauren Bishop's slap had left a dull ache. Not hard, not burning, but painful. Painful in the way that the insult leaves a mark, not the force of the hand. He let out a long breath, his whole body, as if he had just left a silent battle. Agent Hale. Marcus looked up. Captain Reeves stood at the door, his expression solemn but not cold. He nodded slightly, as if to say, "I support you." "You need to go down and do a preliminary report," Reeves said. "Airport security and the FBI field office are waiting." "I know," Marcus replied hoarsely. "I'm coming." Before he walked out the door, Reeves called back Hale. Marcus stopped and turned around. The captain lowered his voice. "What you did today, not everyone has the courage to do. No matter how much it hurt you, you saved the whole flight." Marcus pursed his lips and simply replied, "I'm just doing my job." Reeves shook his head. "No, not everyone can do that." Marcus bowed and left, walking across the empty jet bridge, listening to the lonely click of his shoes. Airport security led Marcus into a small room near the operations area. A table, 2 bottles of water, the faint smell of air conditioning. A female officer took notes. A security guard walked around collecting documents. The air was filled with procedure and the smell of complicated matters. "Sit down, Agent Hale," the female officer said. "We need an initial report before the FBI takes over the investigation." Marcus sat down, back straight, hands flat on the table. The habit of someone who had been through many interrogations, not as a suspect but as a witness or as someone responsible. Do you need some water? I'm fine. Thanks. Okay, the officer turned on the recorder. Give me the whole story from the start of the conflict. Marcus tells, slowly, clearly, without omission, without embellishment. He told the story of the old man coughing and needing help. He told the words, people like you. He told the slap. He was forced to show his badge. Every word he spoke made the room heavier. Not because he was angry, but because he was so calm. Calmness made everything more real, sharper, deeper. When Marcus finished, the female officer just nodded silently. I understand. Thank you for keeping calm throughout the incident. If I had lost my temper, things would have been a lot worse, Marcus replied. She looked at him for a long moment. A normal person, in that situation, wouldn't be able to do what you did. Marcus looked down at the table. His voice was a little quieter, but still firm. I didn't want anyone hurt. Didn't want her destroyed. But she crossed the line. I couldn't let it go. The female officer placed her hand on her document and said, you did the right thing. Even if the right thing sometimes hurts. Marcus smiled slightly, a tired, joyless smile. There was a knock on the door. 2 FBI agents entered, a tall man, a woman with tightly ponytailed brown hair. The atmosphere changed instantly, serious, formal, professionally, cold. Agent Hale. The male agent held out his hand. I'm Special Agent Jordan Keller. This is Agent Samantha Dorsey. Marcus shook their hands, then sat back down. We have been assigned to the assault of a federal officer on Monarch Flight 882, Keller said. We need you to describe the mental state of flight attendant Lauren Bishop. Marcus was silent for a few seconds. He searched through Lauren's image-red eyes, shaking hands, rapid breathing, the confusion evident in every movement. She's devastated, Marcus said. Mentally unstable. I don't think she meant any harm. But she's not in control. Agent Dorsey took notes, then asked, do you want to prosecute her? The question made Marcus freeze. He remembered the slap. He remembered the humiliation. He remembered the moment all eyes were on him, like he was the source of the trouble. But he also remembered Lauren's frightened eyes, her desperate stutter, her begging him not to destroy her life with a single word. Marcus took a deep breath. I don't want to destroy her, he said slowly. I want the truth to be known. I want her to be supported, not discarded. Agent Keller raised his eyebrows, as if surprised that someone who had just been attacked could say that. He asked, you don't want her to go to jail? Marcus looked straight at her. I don't believe prison fixes someone who's depressed or burned out. I want her to be held accountable, but in a way that gets her back on track. Agent Dorsey stopped writing, looked up at Marcus for a long moment, as if trying to read the man before him. Few people are generous enough to say that, she said. It's not that I'm generous. It's just, I don't want to be the one causing more pain. After his meeting with the FBI, Marcus left the security room. He walked down the long hallway toward the airport exit. No one accompanied him. No one spoke. Each step seemed heavier than the last. He felt exhausted in a way that even the most dangerous missions of the past had not exhausted him. He turned on his phone. There were more than 10 messages. Half were from his corporate assistant. Some were from his security consultant. A few were from close friends. Finally, a message from Mom. Are you okay, Marcus? His mother's text message made him pause. He leaned against the glass railing, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath. Are you okay? No, not okay at all. He had just been slapped because of the color of his skin, in front of hundreds of people, looked at as trouble, and then forced to be the one to destroy their flight. But he did the right thing. That always weighs the most. He replied to his mother, I'm fine, just a little tired. Then put the phone in the bag, walked out to the main area of the airport. As Marcus passed the information desk, a group of passengers recognized him. A woman approached and said softly, you were the one who got slapped, right? Marcus was a little startled but nodded. She said, I want to thank you. Without you, I don't know what would have happened. A man standing nearby added, you handled that situation in a very admirable way. Marcus looked at them, his eyes softening. Thanks, he said, but I only do what is necessary. The man smiled, yes. But what is necessary is something few people can do. They left, leaving Marcus standing there alone, but no longer feeling lonely. The sun was almost down when he stepped out into the parking lot. The last rays of the setting sun cast long golden streaks of light across the parking lot. A light breeze blew, carrying with it the familiar sounds of the airport. Marcus stopped in front of his car. He leaned against the door, head bowed. The slap, the silence in the cabin, Lauren's eyes, the baby's cry. It all came together in a sudden wave of emotions. He wondered, why do things like this keep happening, even when I always try to live right? The question cut into his chest, a small but deep wound. He closed his eyes for a long moment. Then he opened them and took a deep breath. Even though it hurts, even though I'm tired, even though I'm tormented, I know I still have to keep going. Because that's what makes Marcus Hale. The second-floor parking lot at Denver Boulder Airport was still bustling with people near dusk. Cars drove by, doors opened and closed, but all the noise faded as Marcus Hale sat in his car, its engine idling. He hasn't left yet. Not yet. His hands were on the wheel. He was motionless. His eyes were fixed on the windshield, but he was not really seeing anything. That slap, the commotion in the cabin, Lauren's last pleading look. It all played over and over in his head, like a slow-motion movie that couldn't be turned off. Marcus had never known a day so long. A day where a few fateful minutes could weigh his heart down like a ton of stone. His phone lit up. A new text message. From his wife Monica. Hale, your plane really crashed. Are you okay? Call me. Marcus stared at the message for a few seconds, breathing slowly. Then he pressed call. The phone rang only once, and Monica picked up. Marcus, oh my God. Are you okay? Why didn't you call me earlier? Her voice was filled with worry, as if she was trying to stay calm but failing. Marcus leaned his head back in his chair, his voice hoarse. I'm fine. Somewhat. Just a little tired. Is anyone hurt? I was watching TV and saw on the news that there was an incident on Monarch Flight 882. Marcus sat up straight, his heart sinking. News? Monica took a deep breath. It's not just the news. Marcus, things are spreading fast. He frowned. Land fast. Monica replied, her voice low. There is video. People filmed it all. Marcus closed his eyes. Of course. He'd seen dozens of phones raised in the cabin. He'd known it would spread, but he hadn't thought it would be this fast. Monica continued, Marcus, that video is going viral. On Twitter, on TikTok, on major news sites. CNN just put it on, breaking. They're calling it the Monarch slap incident. Marcus paused. He wasn't afraid of social media. He wasn't afraid of attention. But he had always tried to keep his private life clean, quiet, and private. And now he had become a story for the world to dissect. He swallowed. The video. Is it clear? Monica answered slowly, because she knew every word could hurt him. It was clear. They caught it from the moment she said, people like you. Then, the slap. Then you standing still. And the way you spoke calmly. Marcus, that part got shared a lot. They said you were so polite it hurt. Marcus was silent. His breathing was deep but heavy as stone. Monica continued. You became a symbol of dignity. Many people say so. Marcus laughed, a small, choked, unhappy laugh. Dignity. I'm just trying not to make the situation worse. Monica softened her voice. I know. But that's why they said that to you. Marcus looked out the window. The sun was almost gone, leaving only thin streaks of orange in the sky. He said softly, I don't want this to be the story of the whole world. I don't want my name under those headlines. Monica understands. Very much. I know, Marcus. But sometimes you don't get to choose what happens in your life. You only get to choose how you handle it. That statement made Marcus silent for a long time. A very long time. Yes, there are things you don't choose. You just choose how you deal with them. Monica, it's me. Lauren, she's being held at the airport. The FBI has taken over. Monica sighed. I read. They said it was a federal offense. But Marcus, did you make any statement? You made it clear you don't want to put her in jail. Just let the truth be known. Monica said softly. That is the person I know. The person who doesn't want to use his pain as a weapon. Marcus closed his eyes and leaned his head back. I just want justice. I don't want revenge. Yes. And I'm proud of it. Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. Monica's gentleness. It always anchored him when he was at his lowest. I'll be back soon, Marcus said softly. We'll talk more. Monica replied warmly. I'll wait. Drive slowly. The call ended. In that moment, the silent cabin of the car felt like a small sanctuary, the only thing he had control over. Marcus opened Twitter. A mistake. He knew it, but he did it anyway. The homepage was filled with videos from row 14, row 20, row 7. Different angles, but the same moment: Lauren slapping him. His stillness. His silence afterward. The way he held up his badge, not angry, just informing. Trending line: top 1 number Monarch slap. Top 2 number Marcus Hale. His LinkedIn profile was visited thousands of times. The business page he founded, Hale Tech Dynamics, was growing rapidly in followers. But that's not what made him shiver. What made him stop were the comments. He handled it like a true leader. Dignity under pressure. This man deserves respect. No yelling, no anger. Pure discipline. People like him make this world better. Marcus put the phone down. His hands covered his face. Nice words. Yes, they should make him happy. But why does it make him want to cry? Throughout his life, Marcus endured countless stares and sharp words because of the color of his skin. He learned to stand tall. He learned to stay calm. He learned not to react so as not to be seen as aggressive. Today, people praise that calmness, but they don't know that sometimes it's not strength, it's exhaustion. Marcus wondered, when will people like me not have to be so strong to live safely? A question without an answer. He started the car, prepared to go home. But just then, an unknown number called. Marcus hesitated for a second, and then picked up. Agent Hale. The male voice was deep, clear, and formal. Yes, it's me. This is Deputy Director Carl Donovan from the Federal Air Marshal Service. We need you at the Denver field office tonight. We have some business to discuss in person. Marcus paused. Tonight, yes. This is a sensitive situation, and important. Marcus breathed slowly. I'll be there in 30 minutes. We're waiting for you. And Agent Hale. Yes, good job today. Very good job. Call ended. Marcus looked into the windshield. His face was tired but strong. There was something in his eyes, a preparation, a new determination. This story doesn't stop with the slap. It doesn't stop with the airplane cabin. It doesn't stop with social media. It was becoming a national investigation, and he was unwillingly at the center of the storm. Marcus buckled his seatbelt. The car rolled out of the parking lot, the sunset streaming through the windshield in a warm yellow glow. A new chapter is about to begin, one that could lead him to glory or drag him into a political struggle bigger than himself. But whatever it is, he'll face it, because that's how he's lived his life. Night had fallen over Denver. The city was bathed in yellow streetlights, red signs, and distant noises carried on the cold wind. Marcus Hale drove through the airport's outskirts where the Federal Air Marshal Service, Denver field office building, stood quietly, like an unmarked, unnoticed fortress. But anyone in the industry knew it was the heart of hundreds of secret missions each year. He parked and got out. The cold wind whipped his face, refreshing him. Marcus straightened his jacket and walked toward the security glass door. Inside, the long hallway was lit with white lights, and it was so quiet that Marcus could hear his own footsteps echoing. He was led to a small conference room. The door opened, and he saw Deputy Director Carl Donovan standing at a long table holding a thick file in his hand. Agent Hale. Donovan said, his voice low, but not strained. Thank you for coming tonight. Marcus nodded. This is my responsibility. I understand the seriousness of the situation. Donovan motioned for Marcus to sit down. He placed the file on the table and took out some photos and some reports. Marcus glanced down, and he stopped at the name at the top of the page, Lauren Bishop, internal profile. His heart sank a little. Donovan sat down across from Marcus, leaning back slightly, like someone considering how to break some difficult news. I'll get straight to the point, he said. We have new information on Lauren Bishop, and you need to know it. Marcus was silent, not impatient, not afraid, just waiting. Donovan opens the document. Lauren Bishop is not just an out-of-control flight attendant. She has been on Monarch Airlines' internal watch list for the past 6 months. Marcus frowned. Watch list? Donovan nodded. She has had several episodes of erratic behavior in the air, not violent, but emotional outbursts, difficulty breathing, difficulty sleeping, chronic stress. Marcus sank. No one helped her, Donovan sighed. There were warnings. But the airline industry is short-staffed after the pandemic. Everyone is working double shifts. She's working overtime all the time. No one realizes the severity. Marcus looked down at the table. He remembered the look in Lauren's eyes when she'd said, "I'm nervous. I can't breathe." At the time, he'd thought she was just defending herself with an excuse. But now, it might have been true. The second and more important thing, Donovan continued. He pushed a piece of paper towards Marcus. Lauren reported being racially attacked by a passenger 3 months ago. Marcus froze. There was not enough evidence, Donovan said. It was dismissed. But it shows she suffered a lot. Marcus pursed his lips. He was not a soft-hearted man. But hearing that, a vague sadness rose in his chest. Donovan looked closely at Marcus. "You see, she's not a devil. Just a sinking person." "I know," Marcus said softly. "I saw it today." Donovan nodded. "But—" He turned the page. "No matter the reason, attacking a federal officer is a serious federal offense." Marcus nodded slightly. "Yes, I understand." Donovan put his pen down on the table, then spoke slowly. "But there is something more important than the attack." Marcus looked up. Donovan put his hands on the table. "Your case is becoming a major media focus. The White House has asked for initial information. The Department of Transportation has contacted. And it is no longer a small internal matter." Marcus was silent. A deep feeling sank in his heart. He never wanted his story to drag the whole system down. He kept his composure, Donovan added. "That makes him a role model. And the government is trying to use this to reinforce the message of air safety and anti-racism." Marcus closed his eyes for a second. He breathed slowly. "I don't want to be a political symbol." Donovan chuckled. "I know. But sometimes the symbol chooses you, not you." Marcus looked out the frosted glass door. The light from the hallway reflected off his face, half light, half dark. Just like his mood. "I don't like the spotlight. I don't like being an unwilling hero." He just wanted to do his duty and live quietly. "There's one more thing," Donovan continued. He pushed a thick envelope towards Marcus. "This is the cabin's initial report. There are 42 testimonies, 42 people defending him, and almost all of them say the same thing." Marcus opened the envelope. The reports were stapled together, covered in handwriting and print. He read a few lines, and the words caught in his throat. He stayed calm when the entire cabin was losing it. He didn't yell, didn't push back. He protected us. He held his dignity better than any of us could. This man didn't deserve what happened to him. Marcus put down the papers, unable to say anything. Donovan looked at him understandingly, as if he knew exactly what was weighing on Marcus's heart. "Agent Hale," Donovan said softly, "I need you to understand something. None of us want you to be famous. No one wants to use you for PR." Marcus looked straight at him. Donovan continued, "But you did what very few people do. You kept yourself. You kept your discipline. You kept your humanity." There was a small pause. Then Donovan leaned toward Marcus. "And in this country, that's what people need. They need to see light in the dark." Marcus didn't know how to respond. It took him 10 seconds to say, "I just don't want anyone to get hurt anymore." Donovan narrowed his eyes. "And that's why we need you on this." Marcus looked slightly startled. "What do you mean?" "I want you to be the representative at the important hearing with the Aviation Security Committee next month." Marcus slowly sat up straight. "You want me to speak before Congress, not just a speech," Donovan replied. "We want you to propose reforms to flight attendant training, mental health assessments, and procedures for handling hateful behavior in the air." Marcus looked down at the table, contemplating, thinking, struggling. He is not a person who likes to appear in public, especially does not want to use his own painful story to make a show. But then he thought of Lauren, of the other flight attendants, those under immense pressure and underserved, of the passengers of color who face prejudice every day. If you can help change something, it may be just a small step, but it might save someone from a slap or a humiliation like you suffered. Marcus looked up. "Mr. Donovan, I will. But on one condition." Donovan folded his arms, listening intently. "I don't want Lauren Bishop's life to be ruined because of one wrong moment." Donovan looked at him for a long time. Then he smiled slightly, a rare smile. "I think we will find a way." The meeting ended more than an hour later. Marcus stepped out into the hallway, white light shining on his shoulders. He felt a little lighter, not because he knew exactly how things would turn out, but because he knew he had chosen the best path he could have chosen. Not an easy path, Not a safe path, but the right one. When Marcus stepped out into the parking lot, the Denver night air was colder than when he had arrived. But he felt less alone. He didn't know what awaited him, but for the first time since the plane incident, he felt one small but distinct thing: hope. It was dark when Marcus Hale left the Air Marshal's office. Denver was bathed in orange light, quiet but dusty with the cold of the night. Marcus got into his car, took a deep breath, and started the engine. The drive home was nearly 40 minutes, but tonight it felt twice as long. He had just had the longest day in years, and he knew there was more to come. But right now, he just wanted to go home, back to Monica. Back to a place that made him feel like a human being, not a witness, not an icon, not a social media trending name. When Marcus pulled up in front of the house, the living room light was still on. Monica always left it on when he came home late, a gentle reminder that there was someone waiting for him in this house, a place for his heart to stop. He opened the door. Light footsteps were heard immediately. Monica came out of the kitchen. She didn't say anything. Didn't ask if he was okay. Didn't ask what happened. She just walked up and hugged him. A soft hug, tight enough and real. Marcus closed his eyes and rested his head on his wife's shoulder. In that embrace, he felt as if he had taken off the invisible armor he had been wearing all morning. Monica gently stroked his back and whispered, "You're back. That's enough." The three words "that's enough" made Marcus feel his throat tighten. They sat down on the sofa in the living room. Monica poured him a glass of warm water, placing it gently in his hand, as if lifting something fragile. "I saw you on TV tonight." Her voice was light as a breath, not accusing, not treating him as a pitiful person. "You're trending on every platform." Monica continued this time, forcing a smile. "You know, they say you keep your composure like a steel wall." Marcus raised his eyebrows tiredly. "What do you think I think?" Monica looked straight into his eyes. "Every time a black person is insulted, he has to stay calm like a steel wall." "That's not fair at all." That made Marcus look down at the table. His heart ached, not from the pain of today, but from how deeply Monica knew him. "I'm tired," Marcus said softly. "Tired in a way I can't describe." Monica leaned her shoulder on him. "You just be tired. I'm here." He smiled very slightly, then held his wife's hand. They talked for a long time. About tonight's meeting. About Marcus being asked to testify before Congress. About what the FBI had revealed about Lauren Bishop. As Marcus recounts Lauren's history, the insomnia, the stress, the racist abuse she's endured, Monica falls silent. "So that means," Monica said, "she's not just a bad person." Marcus shook his head. "No, just a person drowning. And no one could pull her out in time." Monica sighed. "There are things on social media people will never understand." "Yeah," Marcus replied, his eyes distant. "They only saw 10 seconds, not 3 years." After a while, Monica stood up and said, "I want to show you something, but you have to promise not to get angry." Marcus frowned. Monica took the phone from the kitchen and handed it to him. The screen displayed 3 simple but heavy words: message request, and below that the name Lauren Bishop. Marcus sat up straight. His heart was pounding, not from fear, but because he hadn't expected. "She texted you?" Marcus asked. Monica nodded. "It was sent about an hour ago, I think. She wanted to text you, but didn't have your email or number, so she looked me up on Facebook. Someone must have tagged me in a post." Marcus looked at the phone as if he were looking at a door to the past being reopened. Monica said, "Do you want to see?" Marcus took a deep breath, then nodded. Monica opened the message. It was just a paragraph, less than 100 words. No crying, no justification. Just a confession so raw, so direct, it left Marcus breathless for a few seconds. "Lauren writes, Mrs. Hale, I know I have no right to contact Mr. Marcus, but I can't stand the thought of him thinking I'm evil. I'm not. I just broke. I had no control at that moment. I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want him to know I was so ashamed I couldn't even look at myself. Thank you for reading." Marcus put the phone down very slowly. He said nothing for almost half a minute. Monica looked at him, worried. Marcus. He remained silent. His chest heaved slightly. Finally, he said a very small sentence. "She is in real pain." Monica nodded. "I read that too." Marcus clasped his hands together, propped his elbows on his knees, and looked down at the wooden floor. "I knew. I saw it in her eyes. The fear, the regret, the disorientation. Monica put her hand on his shoulder. Marcus, it's not your fault. Marcus took a deep breath. I know. But the moment she looked at me before she was taken away, it haunts me. Monica pulled her chair closer. Her voice soft, because you have a soft heart. And soft-hearted people hurt more. Marcus smiled slightly, neither happy nor sad, the tired smile of someone who knew himself too well. Do you think I should answer? Marcus asked. Monica thought for a moment. Not tonight. Let me breathe first. But maybe later. When I'm ready? Not for her, for me. Marcus nodded. That was the correct answer. They sat together for a while. Nothing was said, just the steady hum of the heater. Then Marcus stood up and walked to the large window that looked out into the backyard. Outside, a thin layer of snow lay on the lawn, glittering in the lamplight. He wondered why life had put him in this situation. A CEO, an air marshal, a black man, an unwanted symbol, a man who felt someone else's pain and his own pain in the same day. He sighed deeply. Monica walked over to him, leaning lightly on his shoulder. Marcus, she said softly, we will get through this. Not alone, together. That was the sentence Marcus needed most. He didn't respond with words. He just placed his hand on Monica's. A simple gesture, but it said enough. Before going to bed, Marcus checked his work email. There was a new message from the Air Marshal's office. Subject: confidential Bishop case, personal request. Marcus opened the letter. Inside, there is only one line. Tomorrow morning, Lauren Bishop has requested to speak with you privately through a mediator. Decision up to you. Marcus stood still in the darkness. His heart was swirling like a slow, deep whirlpool. Monica saw his expression and asked softly, "What's the matter?" Marcus didn't answer right away. He handed her the phone. Monica finished reading. She took a deep breath. "Marcus, are you sure you want to see me?" Marcus replied with a sentence that surprised even himself. "I don't know. But I think, if she wants to face it, I should face it too." That night, Marcus lay in bed for a long time before falling asleep. It wasn't the slap that came to his mind, but Lauren's eyes that begged to be seen as human, not demon. And Marcus knew tomorrow was going to be a very long day. But he was no longer afraid. He had set out on this path, a path not of revenge but of healing. For her, for you, for all those who have been thrust into darkness by a moment of error. The next morning, Denver was overcast with low gray clouds. There was no sun, no warmth, just a slight chill that made one feel more alert than usual. Marcus Hale stepped out of the car into a small administrative building inside the airport. The building had no sign, its glass windows reflecting the overcast sky. It was a place for airline mediation and internal business, a quiet place filled with heavy conversations the outside world never saw. Marcus took a deep breath. He wasn't sure he was ready, but he knew why he had to come. Not because of the FBI, not because of the media, not because of responsibility, but because, if she wants to face it, he needs to face it too. The staff led him to a small room with frosted glass doors. On the door was a sign, Mediation Room 3. Confidential meeting. Marcus paused before entering. He closed his eyes for a few seconds, then opened the door. Inside, the room was simple, a small, round table, 3 chairs, a water dispenser. Sitting at the end of the table was mediator Helen Carter, a white woman in her 50s with low-tied silver hair and a kind, calm gaze. Helen stood up and smiled slightly. "Good morning, Agent Hale." "Hello," Marcus replied. Then his eyes shifted to the right side of the room. Lauren Bishop sat there. Her hands were clasped on the table, her head bowed. She wasn't wearing her uniform, just a pale gray sweater and jeans. She looked younger than the day it happened, but also more tired, as if the last 2 years had sucked the light from her eyes. Lauren looked up slowly. Her eyes met Marcus's, not defiant or defensive, but the eyes of a woman standing before her own court. "Thank you both for coming," Helen said softly. "This is a voluntary meeting, not legal, not recorded. It is just for you two to say what needs to be said." Marcus nodded. Lauren nodded, too, though barely perceptibly. Helen continued, "I will let you two start when you are ready." Then she sat back silent, not interrupting. There was a long silence. Marcus looked at Lauren and suddenly felt something he didn't expect: sympathy. Not pity, but genuine sympathy. The person before him was broken. Finally, it was Lauren who spoke first. Her voice trembled like a thread. I am sorry. No excuses. No beating around the bush. Just those two words. Lauren swallowed, trying to keep her breathing steady. I'm sorry, Marcus. I really am. I know. I don't have the right to look you in the eye. But I still want to say it. Marcus did not respond immediately. He just listened. Lauren continued, her voice lower this time, as if trying to muster the last of her dignity. I don't remember exactly what I was thinking. I just remember my head was on fire. I was out of control. Everything in front of me became distorted. She clenched her hands. But that doesn't excuse me. I was wrong. Completely wrong. Marcus nodded slowly. I know. Lauren let out a breath, the breath of someone who had waited 2 years to hear those exact words. She touched the hem of her shirt, twisting the fabric slightly. You don't know. After that day, my life fell apart. But what haunted me was not the loss of my job, not the humiliation. It was the way you looked at me as you were being led away. She was tearful but tried not to cry. You don't see me as an enemy. You don't see me as a bad person. You just see me as a failure. Marcus felt his chest sink. And, because of that look, Lauren continued, it hurt. Hurt in a way I had never known. Helen sat still, letting the atmosphere guide her. Lauren continued, I've been seeing a therapist 3 times a week. For the past 2 years, I've been trying to understand why I became the person I was that day. She took a deep breath and said, and I realized something. I had been carrying too much pressure, too many old wounds, too many fears that I had never healed. I stuffed it all into work, into responsibilities, until it burst. She looked at Marcus, her voice small but sincere. You took the slap from me. But for years before that, I also slapped myself every day. Marcus leaned back in his chair, not defensively, but to allow his heart to listen more clearly. He said, for the first time, Lauren, I didn't come here to listen to you destroy yourself. Lauren shook her head. I didn't self-destruct. I just admitted it. Marcus sighed softly. I know you're hurting. I saw it in your eyes that day. Not hate, but panic. Lauren was startled. Perhaps she hadn't expected him to say that. Marcus continued. I never thought you were evil. I never did. Lauren raised her hand to her mouth. Tears finally fell. Helen handed her a tissue. After a long while, Lauren regained her composure. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, she enunciated. I'm asking you not to carry the pain I caused as your image. You don't deserve it. Marcus looked straight at her. Lauren, you don't make me feel bad about myself. You can't. No one has that right but me. Lauren closed her eyes, as if the words had undone an invisible lock in her chest. After a few very long minutes of silence, Marcus asked Lauren, what do you want from this meeting? The question made Lauren pause. She thought for a long time, and then replied, I want to look at the man I hurt and tell myself that I can be someone else. A better person? Marcus nodded slightly. And I want to ask you something, Lauren continued, her voice almost trembling. If tomorrow I really change, if I really become someone better, I want you to know that. Just know. No forgiveness needed. Marcus sat up straight, placing his hands on the table. Lauren, he said slowly, if you really change, I will be the first to believe. Lauren burst into tears, but this time it was the cry of someone who had just lifted a 2-year burden from her shoulders. Helen looked at the two with relief in her eyes, as if she had just witnessed the last tight knot being untied. As Lauren slowly calmed down, she said one last thing, Marcus. Thank you for coming. You have no idea how much it means to me. Marcus stood. Lauren stood too. They didn't hug. They didn't shake hands. They didn't try to create a nice moment. They just bowed to each other. Two people stood before each other, no longer the victim and the perpetrator, no longer the air marshal and the flight attendant, no longer the offended black man and the wronged woman. But two lives that once collided and tore each other apart, now looking at that tear with rare courage. Marcus walked out the front door. Lauren stood there for a few seconds, then said softly, I wish you peace. Marcus turned his head back, not laughing, not crying, just nodding very slightly. Me too. And the door closed. Softly. But enough to close one painful chapter, so a new one could begin. 3 weeks after meeting Lauren Bishop, Washington, D.C., greeted Marcus Hale with a cool, clear morning. The sky was a deep, endless blue. The young trees lining Constitution Avenue swayed in the breeze, and the white federal buildings seemed to glow. There is something both solemn and heavy in the air of the Capitol, especially when you are about to enter a hearing that is being broadcast live across the country. Marcus adjusted his tie, tried to keep his breathing even. He wasn't afraid of crowds of the press of the spotlight, but he understood he wasn't speaking just for himself. He was speaking for those who had been silent because no one was listening. He was speaking for the exhausted flight attendants, the scorned passengers, the abandoned employees, and the psychological pressure in Lauren who had dared to face herself. He didn't want to be an icon, but today he accepted that role, not for fame but for hope. In front of the National Assembly building, reporters stood in long lines, microphones raised high. "Mr. Hale, what do you think your case will change? Are you angry? Do you forgive the flight attendant? Do you think the airline industry is systematically racist?" Marcus didn't answer. He just nodded slightly and walked straight inside his eyes. Calm but deep, as if he was preparing himself for any questions that would come his way in the hearing room. A staff member led him into the waiting room. As he waited, Marcus looked at his hands. The hands that had held Monica's on those weary nights. The hands that had lifted a glass of water during Lauren's reconciliation. And the same hands that would now be placed before the microphone to tell the story of a nation bewildered by its own wounds. When the time came, Marcus walked into the hearing room, a large room with a long wooden table and a small microphone. The rows of chairs behind him were filled with spectators, reporters, and consultants. The Federal Aviation Security Committee sat in high seats. The chairman of the committee, Senator Harold Whitmore, an elderly man with silver hair, looked at Marcus with respect. "Mr. Hale," he said, "thank you for coming today. We know this hasn't been easy." Marcus nodded, then sat down in front of the microphone. Senator Whitmore continued, "We want to hear from you not just about that day, but about what you think the system needs to change." Marcus took a deep breath. Then he began. "Sir Marcus," said his voice deep and clear, "I am Marcus Hale, Air Marshal, businessman, husband, and father." He paused for a beat, a necessary pause for the listener to concentrate. "On the day of the incident, I didn't think I would be the subject of a video that would go viral across America. I was just a passenger who wanted to go home, a black man sitting quietly in his seat and getting slapped." There was a small rustling sound from the reporters in the room. Marcus continued, "I want to make one thing clear. I am not here to tell a story of self-pity. I am here because I believe my story is just the surface. Beneath the surface lies a much larger problem: the mental health of airline workers, the lack of preparedness in crisis management, and the subtle but very real prejudices in our society." Senator Whitmore nodded, taking note. Marcus continued, "I saw that flight attendant again that day, Lauren Bishop. Not in a courtroom, but in a small mediation room. And I saw the truth that the video never captured. She was a person crushed by pressure. A person who was not properly supported. A person who sank before anyone could see." The auditorium was silent. That doesn't excuse her actions, but it does explain why she broke it. Marcus looked at each person on the committee. "We cannot continue to build a system that relies on demanding that people be inhumanly strong. No flight attendant should have to force a smile while their mind is cracking. No passenger should be insulted because of their skin color or status. No security officer should be the victim of a person falling off a cliff." He paused to catch his breath. Many people behind him wiped away tears. Marcus bowed his head slightly, then continued, "I don't want Lauren to be ruined for life because of a moment's mistake. I want the system fixed so that no one else has to suffer like we both did." "So, where do you think we should start?" asked Senator Whitmore. Marcus sat up straight. "From respect for people. Not theory, not slogans." He stated each point clearly. 1. Mandatory training on stress and conflict management for all flight attendants and frontline staff. 2. Increase psychological support. Real support, not paperwork, for airline employees. 3. Strict procedures for dealing with hateful behavior, no matter who it comes from. 4. Establish a safe reporting channel for flight attendants, especially those under mental stress. Marcus took a breath. 5. And finally, a culture of equity, where black people like me, don't always have to keep calm to appear harmless. A small wow went up from the press. That sentence went straight to the heart of American society. Marcus continued slowly and deeply. I kept calm that day, not because I was a hero, but because I had learned all my life how to stay calm in order to survive. Senator Whitmore tilted his head. And today, Marcus said, his voice firm, I don't just want to survive. I want to change what keeps so many people like me alive. The whole audience stood up and applauded. Not the thunderous applause of a performance, but a deep, respectful applause for a man who carried the pain of thousands and spoke in the calmest voice. Senator Whitmore tapped his gavel. Mr. Hale, your words will be recorded in the history of this committee. Marcus nodded, not proudly, just gently, like someone who had completed an important part of the journey. At the end of the hearing, Marcus walked out of the building. It was still cold, but there was a hint of sunlight in the distance. Reporters gathered around him and asked Mr. Hale, how do you feel after your speech? Marcus replied simply, I feel like we're just getting started. Do you think Lauren Bishop deserves forgiveness? Marcus looked straight at the group of reporters. I think he said everyone deserves a second chance, if they choose to change. So, have you forgiven me? Marcus smiled slightly. A smile, both sad and beautiful. Forgiveness is a journey. I am on the journey. Then, he walked on, leaving behind the flashing lights and flashing cameras toward the waiting car. In his pocket was a sheet of paper with next month's schedule, including a series of meetings with the FAA, with airlines, and a new workshop on psychological support for flight attendants. Marcus looked at it, chuckling slightly. Life is strange. A slap can stop a plane, but it can also set a system in motion. He opened the car door and got in. Phone message from Monica. You did well. Go home, the baby and I are waiting. Marcus looked at the words and felt his heart lighten. And at that moment he realized, not the hearings, not the lights, not the new laws that will be written. What healed him was facing himself and the person who hurt him, and choosing to move on instead of sinking. The car rolled. The Washington sky opened up before us. A new journey was beginning. Marcus Hale's story is more than just an incident on a plane. It's a mirror of something very real. How people become vulnerable when pressure builds up over time. How a single moment of error can destroy years of hard work. And most importantly, how a calm choice can save not just one person, but an entire system. We all have days in our lives when we feel like we're on a tightrope. Just one word is enough to snap. We sometimes overreact, sometimes we're misunderstood, sometimes we let our emotions lead us into things we regret for the rest of our lives. But this story reminds us that character isn't about never making mistakes, it's about facing up to them. Marcus chooses calm, not because he is weak, but because he is strong enough not to lose himself. Lauren chooses confrontation, not to be forgiven, but to start over. Healing doesn't come in shouting, but in quiet, honest conversations. Life doesn't always present us with perfect choices, but it does present us with opportunities to choose kindness to others and to ourselves. And sometimes that kindness opens the door to hope where we thought there was no more. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story with me. If the story touches your heart or reminds you of a moment in your life, I hope you like, share, and subscribe to the channel so I can bring you more meaningful, profound, and humane stories. See you again on the next journeys.